Hello, I'm Bill Moggridge. I come from London, but I live in California, and I'm a designer. Yeah, the way I think about sustainability is that it's really an expansion of the context of design. And you can think of design in three concentric circles. The first one on the inside is about people, and then this next one around it is the environment that we live in. We're not just thinking about designing products like everyday things, but we're thinking about health and well-being in a broader way. If you think about the built environment, like a building, we don't just think about houses and streets, but we think more about social innovation, how people relate to each other socially. And then if we think about sustainability, instead of just thinking about materials, things that can be recycled and so on, we need to think more in a holistic way about the entire planet, the relationship between one society and another part of the society and different part of the world can't be disconnected because everybody's affected by everybody else. And we all have to think about what comes first and what comes later. So when I come to thinking about the difference between a bus and an iPhone, I think the main thing is scale. I was lucky enough to study in London in the 60s and was taught by Doug Scott, who was the designer of the London Routemaster bus. That was the last one where there was a platform that you could jump onto running from the outside. And there was a ticket guy inside who had a lovely machine that gave you a paper ticket. And if I think about the delight in the interactions that I had with that bus, it was mostly about things like running onto it and jumping, and then going upstairs and seeing London flowing down below you. Whereas if I think about an iPhone, the delight is much more to do with these tiny little gestures, very personal and small. The business of a flick or an expansion with your fingers. So they're very different relationships that we have between something that we're inside, part of a service, part of society, versus something where we use it as a personal object. Well, I think the thing about sustainability is that it really does belong to the many. If you look at the way that sustainability has come about as an idea, it's mostly grassroots, and it's founded mostly in Scandinavia, here in Denmark and in Germany, but it's grown as it's been accepted by other people. But it's driven by the people, it's driven by the many. It's only when democracy forces the companies and forces the politicians to take note that things really do change. So I think sustainability belongs to the many and will continue to do so. Well, I think a good city is really a form of an ecology. It's a very natural thing. It has a sort of natural relationship between the different components that make it successful. And you can think of it perhaps in the way that you divide into mind and heart and spirit or soul. And I think as designers we usually have to work with the mind part. We have to solve a problem, be logical. But if we do that with thinking about also the heart, then perhaps the soul will come, the spirit will come. So I think if we start with a combination of mind and heart, we might find a successful soul. I think the way that cities connect people together is really where their life comes from. And of course the physical proximity, the fact that things are close to each other, people can do things in a social way, has been there as part of city life always. But it is enabled by these new technologies. I think the smart mobs idea is wonderful, that everybody has a cell phone and they can quickly connect to each other, and then they can get together if they wish to and have a rave or have a happening or have something that means something to them. So the idea that we can be very mobile, we can be very connected with the new technologies makes that life even richer. The one that's naturally rich by connectivity is enabled and enhanced, I should say, by the new technologies. Yes. The way I think about memes is cultural characteristics. And in that sense, it's really diversity that makes them thrive. I think the more we can encourage diversity in cities, not the big plan coming from the top autocratically, but allowing the ecology of growth in a very diverse way, both in human terms and in design terms, the more likely we are to have a successful city. Yeah, I think stories are the way that people relate to their own experiences and then pass them to each other or remember them. So in that sense, they're a sort of intrinsic part of the way we see our cities. And perhaps coming back to that idea of mind and heart and spirit or soul, the stories are the way that we connect the part that we recognize with our mind and make it remembered by our heart. And there again, it can reinforce the soul or the spirit. So I think stories are a very key element to the way we think about ourselves in our cities. Yeah, I don't think we want to segregate work and play or entertainment and life. I mean, those are things that really should be integrated. If we're enjoying our work, then it feels like play. And if we're enjoying our play, we might be able to use it in our work. Same with entertainment and life. So I welcome the sorts of things that allow that increase in freedom, which are partly the built environment, the city itself, but they are also, again, the technology. I mean, the freedom that your laptop gives you to take it with you and be part of a community working together at one moment, but then go anywhere you want and continue with your work. Do a little playing in between. The fact that you can be connected into lots of different social circles with your friends using the smartphone or any form of communication. And those are all things that will help us to enjoy the freedom of the city, I think. You know, I think recent history with the downturn that was caused obviously by excessive greed, there is a big backlash in society against greed. And I certainly hope that that in itself is sustainable. The thing about the city skyline is that I'm sure I can't imagine it, but at least I can see a sort of sense of change or growth. And it's interesting looking back and thinking about some of the nature of sustainability that's already been improved. I sort of imagine a big city of the horse-drawn era, where you got all those metal rims of carts and the metal hooves of the horses making the noise on the cobblestones as being an incredible form of noise pollution. I remember the era of coal because I was brought up in the 50s, and by the time I went to college in London in the early 60s, there was still a little bit of remnants of the coal era still there. In fact, the last smog was my first year of college in 1962, where the whole of London was closed down by a yellow fog that was impossible to breathe and impossible to see more than about 2 meters. That has changed, so some good things have happened. So if I look then forward towards the future, the things I see are more changes of that kind of nature that will alter the way the city is. It's lovely being here in Copenhagen because you can see all the bicycles being used. I mean, that stream of bicycles every morning and evening, where people, 47% of them, I believe, are going to work or coming from work on their bicycles, means the city is already altered to allow that bicycle traffic rather than cars. If I look at the way cars themselves are changing, electric vehicles are obviously something that will help, or new forms of energy for transportation. So any of those changes that move the way we are living our lives in the cities will, I think, change that landscape. But I hope it happens in a natural and ecological and evolutionary way, which has got the complexity and richness of nature and society.